now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm hoping tonight I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes
Very. Okay. Let's go. Yeah. What's up? Welcome. We are dropping in to Diane, Wash, DG, welcome. Oh, we're gonna have a good one today, y'all. Good. Comments back here. This is MLK's alert. Anybody who's not familiar. Welcome, Maurice. Exo from Texas. 86 was a good year. It's 7. Always a good year to be 7. MLK's last words before he transitioned. Just do God's will. You just want to do God's will. He knew it was coming. When the night before he shot, hours before he shot, he gives a speech that says, of course, I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not worried about that now, because I just want to do God's will. And God has let me see the promised land. Because I've been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but I will tell you tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm not worried about any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Dude, tell me that MLK did not know his time in his body was coming to an end with that speech. Unbelievable. What's up, everybody? It's actually very fitting. It's a very fitting song to put some comments on. Going live on YouTube and Instagram. Let me just check in actually first. How's everybody doing? I would love to know where people are in the world. If you are joining right now, just leave a comment. Like, where are you? Are you in Uganda? I know somebody's in Texas. Could you be in Australia? I don't know. Join. Let's see. We have people on YouTube from all over. Okay. Sweden. Amazing. It's just more of a remembrance that it's just one community. It's one thing. It's one humanity. And it's one God. So let's talk about God a little bit. Now, I'm a Jewish man because that's how I was born. Living life. All right, Squash. Yeah. It's probably the best thing you could do with life is to live it. So let me also throw out at any point, if y'all got questions, just drop them in the chat because I'm going to riff on some stuff. We're going to get into it and we can get into wherever it goes. So it's something that's been really heavy on my heart, strong on my heart. And I've been feeling it more and more over the last days, weeks, maybe months, but more recently, so strong. And it's an idea that once upon a time, I would have never entertained, thought was crazy for thinking it. And then when I started to think it, it was almost scary because it was so different from what I knew. But the more that I see it, the more I can't unsee it. And it's gotten to the point where I see it so clearly, at least for myself, at least for my own perception, my own clarity, my own logic and emotion and reason, that I feel compelled that I can't not talk about it. So that's what we're going to do. And it's a topic, it's a very taboo topic for some people. God can be a very catalyzing topic for people. There are more humans that have killed other people in the name of God than they have killed in the name of anything else. More people have been expired in the name of God, and we continue to see it. And God, typically we think of as all loving, unconditionally loving, all forgiving. But there's so many stories about God. And every culture has its own telling, its own stories, its own perception. But this is really important because whatever name you want to give it, if it's God, if it's Hashem, if it's Krishna, if it's Jesus, if it's Allah, creator, source, let's just make sure we're all talking about the same thing. Because a lot of the distortion comes when when we get lost in the semantics. We're going to be arguing about things and disagreeing with each other about things that are not of the utmost importance. So Squash says, God is all-knowing. If God is all-knowing, what is the point of existence and what truly is love to this source? Beautiful, amazing, great question. So let's look at this from a lens where, we have this false dichotomy of science versus spirituality. Either you believe in science or you believe in religion or spirituality. Either you believe in evolution or you believe in creation. And that's a false dichotomy because everything is one. All is one. That's the foundation. If there's anything that's absolutely true, it's that all is one. Every spiritual tradition, every culture, every religion, regardless of the name that they give to the one source substrate of creation, all agree it's just one. Science agrees it's just one. Science tells us there is an infinite, and infinite means one. It's singular. We think of infinite or infinity as many or a lot. It's just one. There is a singular, infinite, meaning no boundary, no border, no separation, no other. A singular, infinite To say singular and infinite is actually repetitive. There is a singular, infinite source that is the energy that creates the entirety of existence. So you say it's an ominous point of view. You can give it any name that you want to frame it. This is what is. I can tell you from 20 different points of view the same thing. So the frame and the capture and the context is very important. Love you, brother. All right. Ryan Kalish in the house. 2-time World Series champion. 2 rings. Cleaning up huts in the middle of Tanzania. That's my boy right there. So the infinite, the singular, the one, it's all. There is no boundary. There is no border. Now you can believe in a finite God if you want. I'm going to come from the source of existence does not have a name. We labeled that. Yeah, well, nothing has a name. Nothing is named. We give names to everything. There's nothing that inherently has a name. There's nothing that inherently has any meaning. We give meaning to everything. Our perception creates the context for us to give a name, to give meaning, to give words, to give language, to give anything. There's the what is, and then there's the what we perceive. So science tells us there's a singular, infinite field of indestructible energy which cannot be created or destroyed, from which all of life is made manifest. Spirituality and religion tells us there is a singular, infinite, non-dying, eternal source from which all of life is made manifest. We're talking about the same thing. Science calls it the quantum field. And a lot of religion call it God. I like to call it God, but you could give it any name. Sometimes you just call it the creator, source. Different cultures, Allah, Jesus, Krishna, many different names to describe the one. Hashem. Hashem means the name. And it means the name in Hebrew. And it means the name because there are, in the Jewish tradition, the more Orthodox Jews won't say the name of God, that the name that is given in the Old Testament, in the Torah. That book, so the original 5 books, which you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Torah, part of the Old Testament. In that is essentially the source, the prime source of literature from which the most influential religious stories on the planet are told, because it moves into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, among others. But between those 3, they're going to cover about 50% or more of the humans on the planet. And then you add the New Testament to that, and then you have the character, the person, the perception of Jesus Christ, and now we've expanded even further. So the name of God in the Old Testament, there's different names that have been referenced. I mean, it might say Adonai or it might say Lord, but there's a word written in the Hebrew Bible in the Old Testament that has the Hebrew letters Yud, He, Vav, He. And there's parts of me right now, even as I say that, as I grew up a nice young Jewish man, never very religious, had my bar mitzvah and did all that. But later in my life, my 20s and 30s, I worked with and was friends with a lot of Orthodox Jews in the Chabad and spent a lot of time. My kids were born within that, that community, and we were never very religious, but participated a lot. And I think about them, and have so many friends that I really love dearly, and I can't say the name around them. They don't want, it's like, you can't say it. That's why they say Hashem. And so I had this sort of guilt or shame or fear around saying the name, like publicly. And other people do, but it's all about our perception and how we're socialized. And the yud hey vav hey, even if you don't know Hebrew, you can hear the sounds yud, ya, hey, ha, vav, ha, hey, yud hey vav, yay, hey, Yehovah, Yehovah. That tetragrammaton is the H to the Izzo, V to the Izze, where we get Jehovah's Witness from. And there's different thoughts of the pronunciation. So that character, that person, that deity, and is known as Yahweh, the God character, the Adonai character, the Jehovah character. And by character, I don't mean it in any disrespectful way, but looking at it as a story, and even to call it a story for some people would be offensive. Shoot, there's probably a place and time now that I could get killed for that. People would kill me for saying it's a story. That's how serious it is for some people. But everything's story. There is what is, and then there's the story we tell about it. And I've explored the depths of consciousness and religion and humanity and spirituality as far as I could go. Well, that's not true. I could go further, but I should say quite extensively through many different cultures, many different religions, my own experience, going through becoming a paraplegic, plant medicines, readings, books, contemplations, meditations, conversations, working with shamans and scientists and everything in between. And what I'm really deeply connected to is the law of one. All is one. It's just one. Everything is one. There is only one. So from the one, separation is actually impossible. How can you be disconnected from the one if there's only one? There's no possibility of separation. In truth, in the infinite, you can perceive separation. That's the beauty of the game. That's the beauty of the finite experience, the perception of duality, the perception of polarity, the perception of multiplicity. But in truth, the law is one, all is one. And what is that one? Is that source is love. That's what it is. We could talk about that more, and we will. I don't want to go too deep into that aspect of it, although it's a bit crucial for where we're going to go here. But when you think about the one, it's everything, but it's just one thing. And either it's infinite or it isn't. Either it's love or it's fear. Love and fear cannot exist in the same space, in the same time. And we have been taught to fear God. A core tenet of our global spirituality for billions of people is to fear God. But there's just one thing, and we are that thing, and it's impossible for us to be disconnected from that one thing. So if we are to fear the one thing, then in truth, we are to fear ourselves. We are to fear creation itself. We are to fear life itself. And what happens if we believe the insane idea that we're separate from the whole and there's something to fear? We'll believe anything. And when we feel that we are separate from God, that gives us permission to feel separate from others. And it is from that separation that all violence that happens on this planet is made manifest. Your hand would never beat up your leg because it was mad at it, because it knows it's all connected to one thing. So where does it come from? Where does this source of violence come from? Now, I'm sure that there is a primal aspect of humanity that has a proclivity potentially for violence, maybe more for survival. But what are the stories we tell around it? What are the stories we tell around violence? What are the stories that we tell around our morality? And we tend to look to religion for, what's up, Laura? We tend to look to religion for moral guidance, for our moral compass. So let's look at religion. Let's look at this lineage of the Abrahamic religions, which goes back to the Old Testament. And I had a bar mitzvah when I was a kid. I read from the Torah. I had a Torah portion. I don't remember which one I had. I wasn't super into Hebrew school, but I went a couple times after school, every week for years, had my bar mitzvah, read from the Torah. I learned how to read the words. I learned how to read the characters, but I didn't know the translation. So I essentially could memorize sounds. And I read a Torah portion. I'd have to look it up. I couldn't tell you what it was. I definitely didn't know what it meant. And then after my bar mitzvah, I didn't go to a temple anymore. And, just explore. I was just open to everything and sort of been exploring the past 33 years since. And I came back to Judaism and wanted to see it with some fresh eyes. And when I had kids, I wanted them to be at least as Jewish as I was. There's a lot of that intrinsic Jewish guilt, I think, that comes with similarly with Catholicism as well. The needing to carry on the traditions and the bloodline, but it's very strong for within the Jewish culture for a lot of people. So that my kid's mom is not Jewish, which already is a big no-no for a lot of people, because Jews view the bloodline, the official Jewishness of a kid based on the mother, although Reform Judaism now looks at the paternal line. So even there kind of says we can, make up our own rules for our own clubs, and the more Orthodox Jews don't believe Reform Judaism is legitimate. You can't just pick and choose, but we all pick and choose, and we'll get into that. So my son is turning 13. He actually just turned 13, but he's having his bar mitzvah in a week. They've been going to Hebrew school for a couple of years, and now that he's been training for his bar mitzvah, we've been going back to temple every Saturday. And I haven't gone on Saturdays in a long time. And now we're going like every Saturday. And on Saturday is when you read the Torah. Every Saturday you read a portion of the Torah. And he was reading his Torah portion. He was practicing it. And then we came to speak to the rabbi because the rabbi wanted him to give a little speech on it. What do you think about this Torah portion? What do you take from it? What's your perspective? And he asked him to read it in English and underline or highlight some of the things that stood out. So we went to meet with the rabbi, and my son is highlighting and sharing some of the things. And one of the things is my son's Torah portion that he's reading for his bar mitzvah says essentially, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not directly quoting, but what it says in effect is that if a child is insubordinate, then the parents have the right to bring him to the town and kill him. So let me read this question. So overall moral compass is just subjective. That is the main reason why there's so much violence throughout the world. Everything is subjective. The question is, where do we get informed by our morality? What informs our morality? And why is there so much violence throughout the world? So let's go look at the source. And as I was just sharing with my son's Torah portion, our world is shaped by the stories that we tell around it. Because you could get a message from somebody, and maybe your partner calls and says, hey, I'm running late. I love you. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. That didn't sound really loving. It didn't sound real. And you tell yourself a story that they didn't mean it. Or maybe it's like, oh, you know what? They sound really rushed and stressed, but they love me. It's so sweet for them to say it. How do we know? What story do you tell about it? So what story do we tell about humanity, about life, about everything? And the stories that we tell ourselves are the stories that we live in that base our morality. Because morality is not absolute. Different cultures, different religions, there's a morality around what you dress and what you eat and how you treat people and when you pray and the words that you say and how you pray. All of that falls within a level of morality that is disagreed upon. So there's no absolute truth. There's choice. The absolute truth is all is one. The law is one. And so, yet we have so much violence in this world. And even in the animal kingdom, people look at that and think it's violent. It's not violent per se. Animals don't just murder other animals because they're angry. Now, you could give me some exceptions. And there's some times when some animals get killed because they fight. But rhinos aren't going out and just killing gazelles by the thousands. They kill what they want to eat. Sometimes there's killing for taking over some territory. But when they have what they want, they stop. And then everybody goes about their business. That's not the way that our world works. So if we look at the source, what is the source? How far back can we go? And if we look right now, there's war all over the planet. There's killing all over the planet, but there's the war happening with Israel right now, Palestine and Gaza. There's a war with Ukraine and Russia. But I want to look at the one particularly right now in Israel, because that's the one closest having to do with the Old Testament. Although it's invoked in most wars in some way or another. So we can look and say, well, what is the source of violence? And go back into what our enemies have done or into history of violence, of conquering. But that's not the source. So we can go back into our songs, our governments, but that's not the source. If you keep going back and back and back, the absolute source, you cannot get to any more source than source itself, and source is God. So what does God tell us about violence? The Old Testament is inarguably, whether you subscribe to it or don't subscribe to it, agree with it or don't agree with it, it is inarguably the most violent book that maybe has ever been printed. The amount of humans that have been killed in the Old Testament at the hands of God, of Yahweh, directly or indirectly, is millions. Millions. The amount of animals that were sacrificed and killed and slaughtered and given as burnt offerings to please the Lord is millions. So Daisuke says that you don't think I've read the way parts. Can you explain that a little bit more, please? That I haven't read the way parts of the Old Testament. I'm talking about the books from Genesis through Deuteronomy. After we have those 5 books, known as the Torah, but there is also the greater Torah, which is the Tanakh and the Talmud. But after those 5 books, maybe considered the Hebrew Bible, it is definitely part of the Old Testament, along with the different writings that came after that and the prophets, such as Jeremiah and Job and Ecclesiastes and of those sorts. And in those writings, there's not as much murder, sacrifice, rape, destruction, punishment, wrath. Those first 5 books really cover it quite a bit. And I never really realized it. And being that I never really realized it, I recognize that most of us never really realized it, or we just kind of step over it in some way. You know, we know the story of like, well, no, there was a flood on the earth. To reread the book of John. Thank you, Daisuke. I'm not talking about the New Testament, though. I'm currently talking about the Old Testament. So it's a very, 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 very different story about God from the Old Testament to the New Testament. If it were a show and the first season was the Old Testament and the second season was the New Testament, and you wouldn't believe it was the same character playing God. It was like the ant from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like the first season was real dark skin, and then all of a sudden Aunt Viv became real light skinned. And you're like, I know that's not the same person. And then you look at the God of the Old Testament, you look at the God of the New Testament, or even with some of the other writings from the prophets, and it's like, that's not the same character. But it's not, I'm not talking just about Jesus. Oh, all right, Daisuke. So what do you disagree with? Why don't you share? You've gotten really upset because you dropped an F-bomb at me. So what was it that triggered you? Please share. It's a very, very different character from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And we'll cover it. But I want to talk about the source, because as was asked earlier about the source of violence, what is the source of violence on this planet? Well, let's look at the source of everything. Let's look at the root. If the Old Testament, from the Old Testament, sprouted Judaism, sprouted Christianity, sprouted Islam, that's the source. So let's look at that book. And all 3 of those religions, I want to say, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all have a lot of beauty in all of them. There's a lot of distortions as well. But that's what perception is. Perception is distortion because there's only truth. And anything we perceive is shifted from absolute truth. So Life Capsule says everything is God, but in different clothing and masks. Yeah, that's what I subscribe to. And it's the most logical because there's just one thing. What else could it be? If you have a whole pizza, say that whole pizza is God, and you just take one slice of that pizza, is any part of that slice not pizza? No. It's all pizza. It's not the whole pizza, but none of it is not pizza. It's the same with everything because there's just one pizza. There's just one thing. Different clothing, different masks, different perceptions, different stories. And this story, the Old Testament, this Yahweh character that some people believe is God. Some people believe that those writings, that book is the absolute word of God. And that's kind of what I was taught growing up. And, you start to hear some of the stories and people question like, wait a minute, did the sea was really parted? I don't believe that, or some of the more metaphysical things, or the whole earth was like he had an ark. How did he fit all the animals up on there? And so there's some of those questions they could ask, and there's a lot of those. Like they were 40 years in the desert. The desert wasn't that big. How did it take that long for them to get through? So let's see. Squash asks, explain why all stories have some type of alignment into them throughout narratives and books. All stories have some type of alignment through them because everything is an aspect of truth, because it's impossible for anything to be disconnected from God. Everything is a perspective of the one. So in this particular tradition that is so influential, I went back to read it in English. And when you listen to people speak about it or tell stories about it, and the rabbis will speak and share the morals of it, and they're good. I like hearing the stories of people's perceptions and interpretations of it and what it means. Like, what can I take from it? But going through my son's bar mitzvah training, I'm actually going back and reading it, not just trying to read the Hebrew, but like, what is it saying from the source? And as I was reading it for myself, now, 46, lived a lot of life, felt a lot of God in a lot of different ways. And the God that I know is unconditionally loving, unconditionally forgiving. That is the infinite. Anything else would be sadomasochistic. And then I'm going back to read the Old Testament, and beyond the improbable to seemingly impossible metaphysical things, which, again, building a boat that when the earth is flooded and parting the seas and crossing the desert in 40 years. Beyond that, what I didn't realize until I read it for myself recently is that God is really, really angry and gets really wrathful and jealous and really quick to murder and kill. And it's incredibly violent and incredibly bloody. And I was in a relationship recently with a person who was a certified, bona fide, look it up in the dictionary to see it, narcissist, person that had narcissist personality disorder. And it was, truth be told, by far the most abusive relationship I've ever been in. And I didn't see it. Everybody else saw it, but I didn't see it. I was in it. And when I realized it, because I didn't have context, I didn't have language, I didn't know that word I knew things were off and it didn't make sense. And I kept giving and I kept making excuses for why the abuse was okay. And I'd be shown love and then it would be taken away and then I'd be punished. And then I'd be very, very emotionally violent and very controlling, but you don't realize it. And then the love comes and it's almost like Stockholm syndrome. And I see this reading this book and it's like, okay, this God character gets pretty angry, wants humans apparently to just kill animals all the time in its name. Humans are constantly sacrificing animals. And we say words like sacrifice or burnt offering. If you really think about this, what were they doing? Almost all day long, at least twice a day. They're going and finding a ox or a lamb or a dove, different creatures, and bringing them to the temple and then murdering them. Not like eating them or just killing and burning every day to please God. The fuck? That's one of the things where I was like, I realized like, wait a minute, the God that I know wouldn't want me to go and kill animals and give it its blood, show God the blood of an animal I killed to let it know that I appreciated God. That's crazy. It's the most inverted, crazy shit ever. And the book is filled with it. And that's just the animal sacrifice. And now you have the chosen people, the Israelites. And based on the way that he treats them, I don't know how good it is to be chosen. Pretty much put them through hell. And you wonder why Jews and Judaism has become a religion of people that are so resilient. Jews are known for bringing light from the darkness, for overcoming, for finding the good. Why is that? Well, look at the deity that they thought was God. And don't think that they didn't get it. Yahweh killed tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Israelites, of the chosen people, for not obeying. And the ones that, some of them that obeyed the most, his most loyal servants, the most loyal humans, the most loyal Israelites, would do one thing, a small thing wrong, done, killed, boom. I don't remember who it was. It was like Abraham's son or Isaac's sons. I don't remember the names. Aaron's sons. Oh, I think it was Aaron, the high priest Aaron, Moses' brother. So Moses' nephews gave an offering, a prayer to God, but they didn't do it right. So he just killed them. That's not God. And even just saying that right now is something it's so sacrilegious. I'd be so terrified to do. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And for my son's, his Haftorah, his Torah portion, the talks about how parents can take an insubordinate child into the middle of town and kill him. What? What it says. Now, the rabbis over the years, over the centuries, thought this is the word of God. We don't want to kill our children, but God's always right. But we can't call him out on it. How do we extract morality from this? And so they asked questions. And that's why Judaism has become a religion of asking questions and wrestling with God. Why would they have to wrestle with God? They ask questions because they want to know, what does this actually mean? Are we really supposed to kill our children? And then one of the rabbis will say, well, both of the parents need to speak in the same voice. Yes. They have to. And then another rabbi says, they have to be the same height too. Yes, they have to be the same height. We all agree with that. They're basically creating loopholes so that they never have to kill their children while still acknowledging that it's the actual word of God, instead of just saying, nope, we don't agree with that. And so they built a beautiful religion of morality and then give praise to the deity that has done all of the sacrifice, all of the killing, all of the murder, and say thank you. And we bow down and we kiss the book. When you have stories like the Israelites coming out of Egypt, there's the slaves and the oppressors. In this story, the Egyptians are the oppressors, the slave owners, the Israelites are the slaves. The God, Yahweh, who has chosen the Jews, the Israelites, says, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get out of Egypt. Listen to me. I'll take care of it. I'm God. I'm all powerful. I can do whatever I want. I created everything. I created the whole world. Go talk to the Pharaoh. Tells Moses, you go talk to him. You handle it, but you better do it right. Because I chose you. I chose you, Moses. So don't fuck it up. So Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. Pharaoh says, no. So Moses is like, shh. Goes back to God and says, God, he wouldn't do it. And God's like, Pharaoh, I'm so mad. I'm going to do a plague. And he sends a plague down. I don't remember what the first plague is. Maybe if somebody knows what was the first plague, type it in the comments. One of them was frogs. He says, I'm so angry at him, I'm going to just send millions of frogs. Okay. Yeah. Moses is like, cool, you do you. So God sends all these frogs to Egypt. And they're everywhere. And then Moses goes back to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. And he's like, nope. Goes back to Yahweh again. He's like, all right, now we're going to do the locusts. And we're going to eat all the crops. Still didn't happen. And then we're going to kill their cattle. It's like, what? Isn't it just one God? Aren't the Egyptians also connected to the one infinite source, creative source consciousness? Isn't there just one God? Whether they give it a different name, whether they want to make a golden calf or an eagle, or it doesn't even matter. If this is the God, the source, it created everything, but it's choosing one of its creations, one of its children over the other. So much so that as the plagues got worse and worse and worse, God killed the firstborn child of every single Egyptian. I think it was the firstborn male child. The God of the Old Testament killed hundreds of thousands of children so that the Israelites could be free. Are we seeing that happen anywhere in the world today? Where does the violence come from? Judaism is a beautiful religion. It's such a deep love and reverence for God, for celebration, for humanity, for goodness, for kindness, for compassion. And the religion was born from looking at these stories and thinking, how do we bring divinity to it? The stories within Judaism that were written by men, admittedly, are the ones of compassion and love and goodness. The only one that we attribute as the source of the text to be God himself is the one that is brutally violent. That God is a emotionally abusive, narcissistic warlord. And the people that truly are extensions of God, that want to know God, are so gaslit that they do the best they can and bring forth their own godliness, and so much beauty comes from it. But it all comes back to a distortion. And we're all afraid to call it out. Like the emperor not having any clothes. The question, so maybe God in biblical terms is just Satan. Let's talk about that. Let's say that you came from another planet. We all have connection in some way, some emotional attachment to these religious stories, maybe even it's just a little bit, but some context. Let's say you have no context. And you come to this planet. And you say, hey, tell me about, how do you guys view the one? What do you call the creator? What's your moral code? So, well, we have religion. Oh, what's that? Well, religion, it's a set of rules and stories and different perspectives that kind of govern our morality and what we call God is one of the names, the most popular names that we use. And it's written in scriptures and stories. Okay, well, is there there's a book? Oh, there's lots of books. But the source book, this is the source book. This is the Old Testament. And there's also the New Testament and thousands of years of writing. But the main characters for a lot of us is one is God. God's the creator and he's good. And the other is Satan, who's the devil, or Lucifer. There's lots of names depending on your perspective and story. And the devil is bad. Satan. And he's a fallen angel. And when you're human, then you either are going to go to heaven, which is where God lives, or you're going to go to hell, which is where Satan lives. And heaven is amazing all the time. And hell is the worst place ever all the time. Like, think about the best thing ever and the worst thing ever, and think about it eternally. And that's heaven and hell. And the one that rules over hell is Satan. And in hell, there's lots of murder, and there's lots of rape, and there's lots of sacrifice, and children are being killed, and there's mutilation, and just the rivers run red with blood. It's filled with plagues. One wrong step and you're just going to be destroyed, tortured. Gosh, Satan sounds like a real jerk. What an asshole. And they say, yeah, he's the worst. But let me tell you about God. Here, read about God. Read this book. Read the Old Testament. Read about God. He's the good one. And then you read the Old Testament, and it's filled with murder, rape, sacrifice, mutilation, the rivers running red with blood. Literally. So you can decide for yourself your own perception between God and Satan and which one's which. And so much can be misinterpreted because then people will start to say, oh, well, the Jews are devil worshippers, and it's not that black and white. All of it is stories. But again, which I don't think can really be, I mean, it could be, everything could be argued. The way that the deity, the God deity in the Old Testament behaves and the actions that he takes are very, very similar to what we say happens in hell by the devil. It doesn't mean that he is, but it's pretty similar. And I can't unsee that anymore. And I never really knew it because I never really read it. And because all the stories that have come from it and all the beauty and all the morality and the compassion and the kindness that is true, the brilliance in terms of reframing and finding, how do I find light? Where do I find the light in the story about a child that can be murdered, about humanity being wiped off the earth? I mean, there's so many stories we could get into. They're so distorted. And again, that's beyond the aspects or the parts that just are like, no, that didn't, come on, that didn't happen. No. You know, when you get in, like, even if you look at numbers, and I recently wanted to know, okay, I know that 40 years seems like a lot, but we just picture just like people traveling the desert. How many were there? Like thousands? Best estimates, maybe 1 million, 2 million. Let's even say it was only 1 million. I think most estimates by the scholars, I don't say really less than 600,000. But let's say it's 1 million. So I live in Dallas, Texas, the DFW. And collectively in this, greater city is, I think, about 1 million people. So I think, okay, how would I get every person in Dallas to all come and do the same thing at the same time. I can't even get my kids to do that, and I have 2 of them. Imagine getting every single person that lives on your street, in your apartment building, on your block, in your neighborhood. Imagine getting every single one of those people to come outside at the same time. The chances of that happening are minuscule. Minuscule. Even if there was like a meteor, if a meteor hit the center of Dallas, some people wouldn't come out of their house. And we are to believe that 1 million people all came together and went on a journey for 40 years. Now, if it's a metaphor, I could be down with that. But if I'm told, no, this actually happened, I'm going to be compromising my own God-given logic and rationale to accept that. Now, of course, there are things greater than our comprehension. And of course, there are mysteries far beyond our logic. But these are pretty specific stories, pretty specific details. And it's filled with that as well. And so when you look at those types of stories, and then you start to bring in all of the murder and the violence and the sacrifice, and then you go back to the God that you know, the all-loving God. And I know what some people are thinking right now. They're thinking, oh, the Christian God, Jesus. You're talking about Jesus. No. I'm talking about the source, the one, the all, the infinite, the only absolute. And I do believe that, yes, absolutely, Yeshua is a embodied expression of the divine. We're all expressions of the divine, but not all of us are embodied. Not all of us own it. Why? Because somehow we've chosen to believe that we're separate from infinity. We're separate from the infinite. So Yahweh is not God. And I have probably friends that like won't want to talk to me anymore because of that. And again, I'm not trying to at all hate on Judaism. In fact, I give Judaism its props, because that book, man, textbook, narcissistic personality behavior from Yahweh. Textbook. I'm actually going to look it up because I could tell you, but I want to read this to you. Oh, let's try. Let's see what it looks. Let's see how it works with this. So I have the perception that, oh, I'm going to talk. We'll try this. You guys let me know if this, and it's not that ChatGPT knows everything, but I could have Google talk or I could have this talk. Let's see how it sounds. Let's see what comes through. And it's not always right, and it's a reflection of what I share with it. I understand that. Are you there?
I'm here and listening. Let it come through however it wants to.
Okay. Can you guys hear that? Squash, could you hear that? I want you.
I can hear you just fine. Not sure who Squash is, but I'm tuned in.
Okay. I hope you guys could hear this. Can you share just like the top 3 to 5 identifiable traits of a person who has narcissistic personality disorder?
Yeah. Here are some of the most commonly identified traits of someone with narcissistic personality disorder. 1, a grandiose sense of self-importance. Like they exaggerate achievements, expect to be recognized as superior without actually earning it. 2, a deep need for excessive admiration, like a craving for validation that never quite gets filled. 3, a lack of empathy. They have a really hard time recognizing or caring about other people's feelings or needs. 4, exploitative behavior in relationships. They take advantage of others to get what they want. And 5, a strong sense of entitlement. Like they believe they deserve special treatment or obedience just because of who they are. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah.
Or is there a specific angle you want to explore around those traits?
I'll explore those on my own because I want you to just share those and I will expand on it. So excessive admiration, lack of empathy, exploitative, and then a sense of entitlement. And what was the first one?
The first one was a grandiose sense of self-importance. Basically seeing themselves as more important or special than others, often without grounding in actual accomplishments.
So tell me about the act of gaslighting and the way that what do people with NPD do in terms of potentially, giving love or taking love away, or, maybe grooming people, if you want to say that, if you look at that in terms of them having victims of sorts, but if from that lens, how do they groom people?
Yeah, totally. So when someone with narcissistic personality disorder engages in grooming or manipulation, it's often not overt or obvious at first. It usually begins with idealization, love bombing. They might shower you with attention, compliments, validation, or promises, making you feel seen, special, even chosen. That's the hook. Once trust or dependency is built, the shift happens. That's where gaslighting and emotional manipulation come in. They might start withdrawing affection or attention subtly at first, making you question what changed or what you did wrong. If you express hurt or confusion, they might deny it, minimize it, or flip it back on you. That's gaslighting, causing you to doubt your own memory, perception, or sanity. They might say things like, "You're being too sensitive," or "I never said that," or "You always twist things." It keeps you off balance, unsure, and more likely to seek their approval again. The love becomes conditional, given when you comply, withheld when you challenge. All of this builds control. The more you question yourself, the easier it is for them to define reality for you. And in that distorted mirror, they stay in power. Would you like to tie this back into Yahweh or something else you're working on?
Yeah, I'll do that myself. Thank you. This was great. Whoa. All aspects of Yahweh. Absolutely. All aspects of Yahweh. And this was not tell me about Yahweh. This was describe in detail the traits of somebody with narcissistic personality disorder and how they groom people. So let's go over it. Grandiose sense of importance. Can't be more important than God. Excessive admiration. So this is how they, she says they choose people or need to be admired. God continually needed to be told how great he was. Yahweh needs continual prayer, continual sacrifice for him. Lack of empathy. Could murder on the spot, kill millions, wouldn't blink an eye. Exploitative. Isn't it interesting how he asks so much of the Israelites to do? An entitlement. Can you do it for me? The grooming, attention, validation, or being chosen. The chosen people. We are the chosen people. Withholds love, confusion, doubt, blame. It does sound a lot like Satan, the character that we call Satan. And the challenge is, again, it's too dismissive to simply say Judaism, Jews worship Satan. Because the Old Testament, first of all, it's not just for Jews. It's Christians, it's Jews, it's Muslims. And the religion itself, the Jewish religion, Judaism, from this darkness sprouted so much beauty, so much compassion, so much kindness, so much love. But almost in a way like with Stockholm Syndrome. And we continue to just go back to that very dark source. And if we have that as our root, at our source, and we don't acknowledge it, and we don't call it out for what it is, if we don't give language to it, if we don't talk about it, then it's never going to change. How could it? Giving language to something, giving context to something, gives it shape, gives it form, lets us perceive it in this realm of multitude in the infinite. You know what's in the infinite is finite. Finite is in infinite. We experience that. And the result is that we fear God, and it's understandable that we would fear God. And people, so many people will argue with me about that. Fear of God is the first step towards wisdom. The fuck it isn't. Fear of God is the first step in towards control. The God that I know doesn't want to be feared by himself. It's like the ocean wanting the wave to be afraid of it, or the sun wanting its light to be afraid of it. It's crazy. And all violence on this planet is a result of the stories that we tell our children that it's okay to fear God. I don't want to tell that story anymore. I want to tell my children the story of a God that I know, the world that I know, the universe that I know, the existence that I know, that there's just one thing. It's all one thing. This infinite, interconnected source, force, energy from which all of life is made manifest, from which I am a part, which you are a part, extensions of the infinite one. As Squash said in the comments, and thank you for the comments and the conversation, why would you fear something that is you? Exactly. 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 In a finite perception, as human beings, we're going to go through the experience that we call death. Death is a transition. But death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. Life is eternal. Our souls are eternal. And even when we say our souls, it's as if we possess it as a human, that we're humans that have souls, but we're not. We're souls that have humans. Energy creates matter. Spirit creates form. Non-physical creates the physical. What is the source? Mind creates body. Qualitative creates quantitative. I love how it looks like my happy shiny Buddha actually is the one on the microphone. I don't know how to zoom in with you. In like a post-op, I'll have to just cut this. We'll use my voice as a voiceover. We'll just zoom in on this. Where was I? Oh, right. Yahweh's a narcissist. Shoot, man. You know, we got to be careful to not fight against it. So are we the observer? We're the dreamer. We are the witness. But we're also the one having the experience. But we're also the one who created the observer. Because there's just one thing. We are the writer, the actor, the producer, and the director. The external world, the physical world, the dimension of space, 3D. From one comes two. All is one, and now we have duality, polarity, multiplicity, yin yang, night and day, man and woman. And from two, we get three. That's our first three-dimensional shape. That's what we get 3D. The third dimension, space, where there's form, and there's matter, and there's physicality. It's where our five senses operate. We can smell and taste and touch. Hear. It's all physical. Cells of our body. But we have a mind. Can you poke your mind? Can you smell your mind? No. So your mind can't exist in the dimension of space simply because it does not adhere to the laws of the dimension of space. Simple. Where does it exist? In a different dimension, because it has to. Enter the fourth dimension, the dimension of time, the true nature of time, that it's radial, that it's expansive, that it's infinite. All perspective inherently is dualistic because perspective implies that it is only one of another. So it's dualistic in that it's more than one. It's impossible to have a perspective that doesn't have another perspective, or else it wouldn't be a perspective. It just would be what it is. That's what a perspective is. And God bless these perspectives, because We chose to experience duality. We all come from the one. We are the one. There only is one. The only thing that exists is the one. The only time is now. The only place is here. There's no other where to be. There's no other time to be. There's nothing else but now and here. Period. We can experience multiplicity. We can perceive multiplicity. But even in the perception of multiplicity, there is no separation, because there cannot be separation from the one. Otherwise, the infinite is finite. And when you can recognize and integrate this fact and this truth, even more important than a fact, but a truth, the perception of duality and multiplicity exists here. And we see it from here. And we experience it from mind. We have a body, we have a mind, we have a soul. The soul operates the different set of rules as the mind does. So it exists in a different dimension. The body exists in the third dimension, physicality. The mind exists in the fourth dimension of time. The spirit exists in the fifth dimension of energy. Body, mind, spirit, third, fourth, fifth, multi-dimensional beings. How's that for a trinity? The body without the spirit is consciousless form. And the spirit without the body is formless consciousness. And it is the mind which is the bridge between the two. It is the spirit that informs the body. It is the non-physical that informs the physical. But when we get disconnected from our mind thinking that it's coming from source, but that it actually looks out into the physical world and sees this and thinks this is real, and this is where we're trying to go, this is where we are, and it's all perspective. The soul is greater than the mind, which is greater than the body. Our mind does not exist in our body. Our body exists in our mind. The physical exists in the non-physical. And the inversion of that, which is also true, is that we don't exist in the universe exists in us, because we are all, because all is all that is. And we are perceiving the all from an individuated perspective, which is pretty fucking cool. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing. If we understood that, if we really could just like get clear on that, we'd be going around all day long just in awe. How do we exist? What's happening? How am I experiencing anything? And the most incredible gift, it's a gift to experience duality and multiplicity and polarity, because from the one, there is no other. But here we can experience vanilla and chocolate. If the only flavor that existed was vanilla, we'd never know what vanilla tasted like. There's also different aspects of growth that are possible only in duality. In a perception of duality, we can have things like remembering, learning, resilience, courage, growth, evolution, forgiveness. All of those things require duality. It's choice. Why do we have free will? Because we're aspects and emanations of the divine with the perception of choice. Of course, we can choose. And of course, all roads lead back to the one, because we never actually left. There are no roads. It's all a perception. We are observing the dream that we're dreaming. And we are submerged in the dream. And now we are remembering. We are remembering, literally remembering. Coming back together. The weave is tightening. And the more that we remember, the more we connect to our truth, our spirit, our soul, the less we will be informed by the physical world, and the more that we will inform the physical world. And we will inform the physical world from our choice, and our choices are influenced by our stories. And the story that we tell the most about God is that murder, rape, killing, blood, sacrifice, all of it is okay. So Squash asks, how do we ascend the 3D? So it's important to recognize that you currently, all of us, but you currently are in 4D and 5D and however many Ds there are. Because it's infinite, because it's just one. But we have the perception of physicality. Now, before we talk about ascending from 3D, remember that you chose it. You chose to be here. There is a purpose to 3D. And there's many different teachings in esoteric, spiritual cultures, storytelling about what's happening now in these evolution. There's many prophecies happening that are taking place on this planet at the same time. I don't know every prophecy on the planet, but I know maybe like 8 or 10 from many different cultures, and stories told in very different ways, different timelines. Some are thousands of years, some are tens of thousands of years, if not more. And they're all pointing to this exact time in human history as a significant point of evolution in human consciousness. All of them. And some of the teachings say that we are ascending, we are moving from a 3rd density to a 4th density consciousness. And you can think about the densities kind of like chakras. And so moving from 3rd density is kind of the highest, but it's in terms of the more primal, different connections. It's about understanding. It's about learning. There's more identity of self. As we move into a 4th density, that heart consciousness, connectivity, the interconnectedness, the harmony. And the earth itself is evolving into a 4th density consciousness. But there's an infinite amount of timeline, so there's really a splitting. And so this 3D earth with all the violence and the war and the destruction and the separation is going to continue, and those with a consciousness resonant with that story will continue on in that perception, and those that are in the resonance of a higher vibrational consciousness. And this isn't about being better or worse, because that is a perception. If it's a higher vibration, then it's literally a different frequency. And so how do we move with that growth, with that evolution? Do we remain humans in our 3rd dimensional bodies for a while? Yeah. But the consciousness expands. And as the law of one teaches, essentially, how do we How do we win? How do we graduate? There's two paths. It's either the path of service to self or service to others. And the path of service to self still serves God. But in this game of duality, where we need the catalyst and the contrast of the polarity to be able to create the light, some people just get lost in it, but some sign up to say, I'm going to be the darkest. I will be the dark. And so the way to graduate is 95% service to self. That's a lot. 19 out of every 20 decisions you make have to be to benefit you and not somebody else. Not a lot of people are going to do that. But the path of the light that most of us are called for requires 51% service to others, which might sound easy, but if you really think about it, is half of the choices, every choice you make, whatever you're doing, in service to benefit yourself or to benefit others. And to benefit others does not mean it's to necessarily sacrifice yourself. The majority of people are somewhere in the middle. That feels resonant to me. Whether that's the number or not, it's a story. It feels resonant. But what feels really true for me, and I've contemplated this deeply, and again, so many different cultures and stories about how we ascend. Life is, one of the stories we tell is that life is it's like a school, earth school. Well, how do we graduate? Our culture prioritizes accumulation, which has a lot to do with how we track time. An artificial understanding of time. The clock and the calendar are not time. As we spoke about, the dimension of time is infinite, it's radial. You can't quantify something that's infinite, and so we become enslaved into artificial time, that it's going to run out, that it's finite, that there's scarcity. But that's not what time actually is. But so many of us accumulate, hoard, and then we die. Can't take it with you. And then the lesson we learn is that it's not about stuff, but yet that's what our culture promotes. That's what we say time is. Time is money. I have a free ebook on this called The Truth About Time, which you can download from the link in my bio. Get more detail into that. And there's a workbook available with it as well. But when you look at the world from that place and you measure your time and you measure your success quantitatively based on accumulation, you're never going to win. We know this. That's not the way you win life. So how do you win life? Well, if you ask anybody who's on their deathbed, there have been so many people that have been asked things they regret. None of them said, I wish I made more money. Nobody says that. They say, I wish I spent more time with people I loved. I wish I was more present. I wish I had more fun. If you knew that you were infinite, and you are, but if you came from the infinite and you didn't forget, like, I'm an infinite soul, spirit, I'm going to live forever. Would you ever be afraid of any experience? Or would you just fully embrace whatever it was, no matter what it was? Because the experience itself was complete. You'd be good, like a game, like a ride, like a simulation. You immerse yourself in it. And so what makes sense to me is if there is a way to graduate into fourth density, to ascend 3D, that it's to master unconditional love. I mean, really, logic. What else could it be? And what does that mean, unconditional love? It doesn't mean you like everything. It doesn't mean you condone everything. It doesn't mean you don't have discernment. It doesn't mean you don't have preferences. It means there is no condition to which you withhold your love from any other aspect of creation, because you recognize that everything is an extension of you. Everything. And then you might think, well, I would never do some of these horrible things and horrible things to children, and that's not me. It's possible. It's within you. Everything exists within your own consciousness. Everything. There's nothing that expands outside or beyond your consciousness within your own existence and your own awareness. And to make that crystal clear, try this. I want you to imagine something beyond your imagination. See if you can do this. Squash, Hendrix, Vigilant, Charlie, Mike, Izzy. I want you guys all to try this. Imagine something beyond your imagination. Can you do it? It's not possible, is it? Because the further you go, the more you simply expand your awareness of your infinite imagination. Everything exists within your consciousness. Every thought you're thinking, the most atrocious things that are in the field of your consciousness are within your consciousness. They are within you. Nothing is greater than you. Now, the benefit and the positive of that is that you know that there is no challenge or circumstance or condition that could happen to you that is greater than your capacity to expand your awareness, your love, because nothing's outside of you. The content cannot be greater than the container. Then the container is infinite, and it is you. That means all the bad stuff you don't like is there too. It's all there. Thank God you have free will to choose, to ask questions. And that's what we're doing. In the dream spell, based on the profound Mayan cosmology, the archetype of the warrior is not known for fighting. His action is not to fight, it's to ask questions. His power is not his strength, but actually his intelligence. And the result of the intelligence from asking questions is fearlessness. That is winning the war before the battle has begun. That is Michael Phelps training for 4 years of every possible thing that could happen, so that when his goggles break, he doesn't split, doesn't drop for a half a second, because he's tried it, because he's been there, because he knows it. It's all within. As above, so below. It is the reflection that we see of what we extend outward. So we learn to love, to not have condition around our love. And how do we stay here in samsara? Is if we put conditions on our love, if we put judgment on our love. Again, which is not perception, which is not discernment. You can have discernment. You can have preferences. But that is different than punishment. That is different than judgment. It's time for us to remember God. It's time to member God. The kingdom of heaven is within. Peace, unity, love. They're not what's awaiting you in heaven. They're what you need to create and emanate to experience heaven. How do you think you get in? By creating it. It's not a place. There are no places. There's nowhere to go. There's only here. Heaven and hell are states of consciousness. Hell is the perception of being separate from God. And we are taught that we have to get God. So we talked a lot about the Old Testament and the bloodthirsty, narcissistic, murderous, jealous warlord deity. And then some people say, well, that's where the New Testament is. It's true. But there's so much distortion in the New Testament. Where do we learn the separation? There was a messenger, Yeshua ben Joseph, that we know so well as Jesus, who said, I and my Father are one. Who told us, he showed us through his embodiment. Remember, there's no separation. And then Christianity comes along and takes the messenger, makes him the Godhead. The one who was living the embodiment and truth and sharing with us that there is no separation, nothing comes between you and God. The religion put him between us and God. Canaanite storm God is a far cry from the all. Yeah, I mean the brutality and the people that just get wiped out. None of it makes any sense. Can we please acknowledge that the emperor is not wearing any clothes? And can we please call out the narcissistic, sacrificial, blood-thirsty deity posing as God in the Old Testament, that is not the all-powerful source, that is not the loving energy from which all of life is made manifest. It's a distortion, as clear as day. Judgment, it's a distortion. Jealousy is a distortion. Anger is a distortion. Murder, violence, rape, mutilation are consequences of those distortions. And they will continue to this day. And they will continue on until we acknowledge and remove the attachment that we have to the story of fearing God. I'd fear that God too. Squash says, just because they sin within the intuitive nature that the Canaanite God created. Okay, Angelo and Squash One, you can maybe share a little bit more on that. What you get, what you're saying with that, I don't quite get it. So Canaanite storm God is a far cry from the all, just because they sin within the intuitive nature that the Canaanite God created. Well, while you're sharing that, we talk about sin. That the perfect God that created humans in his image made us imperfect. Here's the paradox of Adam and Eve. There's actually a lot. So they were perfect. Everything was perfect. The garden was perfect. But there was a tree that had a fruit they weren't supposed to eat. It sounds imperfect. Sounds a little bit like a test. And if the consequences of failing the test means eternal damnation, it's kind of sadistic. So there's a tree that they said, like, everything's great. You can live here forever. But that's tree of knowledge. I don't want you to know anything. Just trust me. Just trust me. I chose you. Trust me. And they ate from it. Bad move. And it was Lucifer. Bringer of light. Interesting name. And then they get punished. And then forever, all humans born with sin because of that. Well, if they were perfect, why would they have made an imperfect choice? And if the garden was perfect, then why would there be an imperfect aspect of it? And if God was all loving, why would he create a condition where one of his children could do something that he would punish for all of eternity? It's like leaving a knife with a baby and telling him not to stab himself. Why would he do that? Who does that? What's loving about that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But then we just keep building. We just keep building from it. A very inverted reality. And we're told to fear God. We're told to fear the apocalypse. What is the apocalypse? When you think of the apocalypse, what do you think about? Fire, brimstone, hell on earth. Look around. Look in Gaza. Look in parts of Africa. Look all over the world, in Sudan. All over. It's happening. And what does apocalypse mean? Do you guys know what the word means? The actual word apocalypse? Because if you don't, it's going to blow your mind. Squash, I wonder if you know what it means. The word apocalypse simply means the unveiling. That's it. The lifting of the veil. And who's telling us to fear the apocalypse? The people behind the veil. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Because what is the most dangerous thing to external control and external power? I and my Father are one. That changes everything. If there is no separation between you and God, which there isn't, because there's no separation with a wave from the ocean, and there is no separation of a light from the sun, how are you separate from God? And if you're not separate from God, then why would you look externally for any of your guidance, as opposed to extending the love of God and experiencing that love of God reflected back to you? And why would you ever do anything different, regardless of what it was that you perceived? It seems so simple, doesn't it? But we're remembering together. It's good to be with you guys tonight. People coming in from all over the world. I appreciate the comments. the conversations, the interaction. If there's any questions before I sign off, go ahead and leave them here. But we will be dropping into the infinite regularly. When is that in terms of artificial time? I don't know. Is when I feel like it. Then maybe we'll set a schedule with the clock and the calendar at some point. But right now, it's going to be all based on the qualitative feeling of it. God is love. And I want to come back the way we started. Listening to the words.
Longevity has its place.
Let's see if we can start from the beginning. His final words I put to music. Oh, am I able to? I don't think I can rewind it.
But I'm not concerned about that now.
Thanks
I just
for
want to do
watching.
God's will. And He
Appreciate it.
allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything.
I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. But I want to play this. I want to play this track. If you haven't heard Martin Luther King's last week gave known as We've Been to Mountain Top, strongly encourage you to listen to it. The whole 40 minutes is amazing, but even if you just do the last 2 minutes,
But I don't know what will happen now. What will
I
happen
don't know
now?
what will happen.
We've got some difficulties ahead.
We've got some difficult days ahead.
But it really doesn't matter with me now.
But
I just want
it really doesn't matter to me now,
I've been to the mountaintop. Been to the
because I
mountain.
have been to the mountain. And I have seen the promised land.
I may not get there with you.
I may not get there with you.
But I want you to know
I want you to know tonight, we as a people will get to the promised land. I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not worried about any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. I just want to do God's will. I just want to do God's will. I just want to do God's will. I want to do God's will. I just 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 want to do God's will.
Much love. Much peace. See you again.